when we first started, you talked about Majesty and everything, so we're like young guys, we're writing this kind of music, and we come out with our first album, and a lot of people sort of criticize it for being, the songs are too long, and we're overplaying, we don't know how to write songs, and there's too many solos, and it's too technical, and all this stuff. And you know what? We were just like, that's the kind of music we want to write. That's what we feel comfortable doing. And we kept doing it and doing it for a very long time. It just kind of like it's always on the outskirts. It never was something that was considered too acceptable. But all along, we knew that there was a huge fan base and so many people all around the world in all different countries that love progressive music, love progressive rock and metal, and want something more from the music, something different from the 3-minute pop song. So we just kept going and just kept on plowing ahead with this.
Hey, what's up? It's Chris, Redbeard Videos, back with you for part 2 of Fandom Files Dream Theater. Now, before we move on to what this episode will entail, let's go back and take a look at what we covered on the first episode.
There walks a God among us who's seen the writing on the wall. He is the revolution. He'll be the one to save us all. Now with the means to expand our holy ground. Read between the lines, or is it too late? Was it bad luck? Was it fate? Or a past that you couldn't escape?
So, in 2013, Dream Theater decided that this was the true beginning, the new beginning of the band. Dramatic Turn of Events was a transition album for sure. And we'll get to Dramatic Turn of Events in a moment. But you can tell that it was definitely a Portnoy album, without question. So, with that being said, I wrestled with this album for a while. I was on the brink between this album and Distance Over Time, because there is an inconsistency to this album. And I know Dream Theater does this thing like this, the camaraderie thing, where on all albums it'll say all music written and arranged by Dream Theater. It does not give specific credit to a band member when they're writing the music, only lyrics. This actually does more for me to explain what's going on with Dream Theater than if they specifically said this guy wrote this song, this guy wrote this song, this guy wrote this song, because the writing process clearly is different. The sound is clearly different. And even though Mangini played on Dramatic Turn of Events, this album sounds vastly different.
Over and over again, I really don't know that. I'm buried up within, open wounds shooting out in my skin.
This album has an epic feel to it in general. It definitely feels like a big album. It definitely feels like Dream Theater was like, okay, we need to put our big step forward here. We need to make everybody forget that Mike Portnoy was here, and we need to be our own band again.
You live without shame. You're digging up a cold line, standing on the sidelines, watching through the looking glass.
It's generally a good album, but there is a lot of inconsistency here if I go down the thing. The False Awakening Suite is just an instrumental opening. It had a lot of like orchestration in the whole bit, which we've heard from them before. Ever since Rudis has been in the band, there's been a sense of orchestration, a sense of bigness, okay? That's just what they did. Inside, very heavy song, Very cool song. I enjoy The Enemy Inside. I thought it was cool. However, the one thing I find about The Enemy Inside is that it's not a song I can listen to a lot. Like everything on literally every album before this album, I can listen to any Dream Theater song except for a handful, like a select handful, maybe one or two. And it's not even that I dislike those songs. I just played them to death. Enemy Inside is not a song I dislike, but I don't find myself listening to it very often. And I find myself getting kind of bored. It's a good song, though. It's solid. Good, heavy song. Nice opener. Just like I was talking about earlier, it's a solid opener. It's what I expect from Dream Theater. Big, fast, heavy, just punch you in the face, epic type of opener, okay?
You are caught up in your gravity.
The Looking Glass is a great song. Awesome melodies, the whole thing. The Looking Glass is clearly a Rush tribute, right? This sounds like a Rush riff. This sounds like an Alex Lifeson riff. Stuff on this album definitely gives me Rush vibes, and that's cool. I appreciate that, because especially if they're reestablishing themselves coming off of Dramatic Turn of Events, they definitely went back to their roots, and that's very cool. Like pre even Images and Words, like their listening roots, not even their like playing roots.
Shed your light on me. Shed your light on me. Be my eyes when I can't see. Shed your
The Bigger Picture is a fantastic song. It's got a really good melody, and it's just a cool song. It's got nice little slow verses and the whole bit. The Enigma Machine, it's one of the most underwhelming instrumental pieces that they've ever done. Like when I go through the lexicon of all of their instrumental pieces, the Enigma Machine just sticks out as something that's like, I don't know. Like there's something about it that's missing. Behind the Veil is an all-timer to me. It would rank up there in like the top 15 or 20 Dream Theater songs for me. It's a great, great song.
I have been a broken calling. Someone save me. Look behind the veil. Please don't walk away.
Surrender to Reason is, again, another... Everything on this album feels very epic. And I always love to see John Mayung getting credit for writing stuff. That's really cool to me. I always like that. He doesn't get a lot of individual credits. It doesn't happen very often.
Show the way up to my state of mind. Wash away the sorrow.
Along for the Ride, dude, I fucking love that song. Like, I love that song. And I think it's, I'm not a God person. I know John Petrucci wrote that song with Jordan Rudess. I think Petrucci's a big God guy. A lot of his music or a lot of his lyrics, when he winds up writing them, definitely have a God vibe to them. And I'm not saying he's like jamming Christianity down my throat or anything like that. But I really dig the message of Along for the Ride. I'm not a God person, but I am definitely I have a spirituality about me that definitely speaks to sometimes things just don't happen for no reason. Like sometimes, I mean, granted, I think the world is a series of random events, but I also think that some things are supposed to happen the way that they do. And I don't necessarily believe that's a God thing. I just think that's just the way it is, right? Finally, with the self-titled album, we have come to the portion that perplexes me. And I've gone through this on multiple occasions. Illumination Theory is another one of those Dream Theater songs that Dream Theater fans will ardently defend to the very death. Oh my God, it's like Stephen King fans with The Stand. It's just so long. Oh my God. And I understand that writing a 22, 23-minute song is impressive. We're talking about a band who has written 3 such songs with the 45-minute 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence, which you can argue are different songs or whatever. I always take it as one song, as one musical piece. And it comes off that way, and it's never boring, and it never makes me go, wow, this should just end already. Octavarium, Change of Season. These are songs that have never, ever grown boring to me or gotten tired, ever.
When your back's against the wall and your time's uncertain, consider this question, no standing by when flesh and blood are threatened. What are you willing to kill for?
Illumination Theory has some really beautiful, brilliant, wonderful moments. Again, going back to the Rush vibe, there's even a Caress of Steel mention on this song musically. There's no doubt. There is no doubt that it's directly influenced by Caress of Steel, which is one of Rush's seminal albums. Caress of Steel might be the beginning of prog metal as we know it. There's a section in this song that definitely harkens back to either the Necromancer or the Fountain of Lamnenth or both.
Mothers for the children, husbands for their wives, mothers for the kingdom. Rooting in the tower, watching more is the land, holding up a creature, helplessly they stand.
And that's wonderful. And I love that because it doesn't sound like they're ripping Rush off. They're definitely paying homage without question. With that being said, with all the brilliance that this song brings, and Labrie sings wonderfully, and there's guitar solos and keyboard solos, there's just so much great about this song. God, it feels like it's 5 minutes too long. There comes a point where I was like, why are we still doing this? They have what I like to call the Iron Maiden disease, which is Iron Maiden has this thing where they fall in love with their shit. Whatever they're doing, there are times where Iron Maiden will play like an 8-minute song and I'm like, God, that should have been a 3.5-minute song. What are they doing? It's just too much of the same thing. It gets to be, okay, we got it. You established this. Let's move on. And this would be one of the few times that Dream Theater does a song that's that long where I'm like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this? So all in all, though, I would say that the self-titled album, I wrestled with self-titled versus Distance Over Time when it came to the positioning on my list. And I have to say, all in all, the songs on self-titled are just better. And the inconsistency on Distance Over Time and Labrie's voice, his tone, and something about the way he's produced or something on Distance Over Time just didn't connect with me, even though there are like 2 or 3 all-timers on Distance Over Time versus the 1 or 2 on this album. I like portions of every song on this album except for maybe Enigma Machine is the only song that I can do without on the self-titled, whereas there's like 1 or 2 on Distance Over Time that I can do without.
It's really great for us to have the opportunity to have a scheduled time to come in and kind of focus our ideas, because with us it's not about like finding inspiration or finding musical ideas. It's about actually having the time slotted so we can come in and get them all down.
A lot of bands will do pre-production outside of the studio. Dream Theater, they actually are writing this album in the studio.
We're kind of like real old school with that. We spend months in the studio, and we're very fortunate to be able to do that.
And once we're in the studio together, then a lot of things happen. Then it's just kind of like the ideas pour out, and it's more about working with all of them and figuring out what we want to use, what we don't, organizing them, making a plan, a concept,
We might want to add another one.
And so it's like a great release for us to be here in the studio and work together and finally have the opportunity to actually get all this stuff, out.
Yeah, I don't know how to sum it up, but I mean, I guess I could sum it up by just saying I was put in a position where I kind of had to quit in order to move forward. I love Dream Theater. I love the guys. It's been my baby for 25 years, but I just needed a break from Dream Theater. And a lot of people have already misinterpreted my press release saying that, well, if he needs a break, why is he playing with all these other bands? I didn't need a break from playing and from touring and doing projects. I really just felt like Dream Theater needed a break. We had been on an endless write, record, tour cycle, for a solid 12, 15 years, almost 20 years at this point, without any real breaks. And I was just feeling, I don't know, it was just a pattern that needed to be broken. And this isn't something that I just started feeling and decided overnight. I mean, this dates back to last year. It was starting to become a little stale to me, and I would go off and do these other projects, and they were very refreshing to me. And yet I'd come back to Dream Theater, and as much as I love the music, and as much as me and the band members are brothers, I just felt like we needed a break from each other in order to reignite the flame. Those guys didn't agree with me, They wanted to keep going, and, they wanted to start a new album in January, and I just really felt strongly that a break could do us some good.
My hands are shaking.
Obviously, this is one of the most important decisions of our career, and sorry to have made you wait as long as you have been, and I'm sure it's been extremely stressful. And we'd like to, at this point, welcome you to the family.
Ah! Oh, you sons of...
He was actually pretty emotional when
He went on.
right? He was really.
He went on?
I
I think we were sitting there for about 10 minutes just letting him talk and get everything, all the emotions that he had gone through, what he was experiencing right then and there.
Wow. I definitely have a tsunami of things going through my head, like almost throwing up one day, and I came up with every reason every other drummer could. Like you were like waiting till some drummer got back to his country or whatever, and that's why it was taking so long. And I have my Dream Theater hat like I just went first in the NFL draft.
This is where it gets fun, because here's the deal. I am doing 2 episodes of Fandom Files Dream Theater, right? And one was going to be Mangini era, and one was going to be Portnoy era. And this is an interesting one, dramatic turn of events, because to me, this is a Portnoy era album, even though he didn't play on it. The reason why I say that is because it was clearly written with Portnoy in mind, or he even assisted in writing a lot of these songs. And that is obvious. If you're a Dream Theater fan, or you're someone who has listened to Dream Theater on a regular basis, you can tell the difference. I'm not saying one's better than the other in terms of drumming ability or in terms of being a drummer. All I'm saying is each drummer has a different effect on Dream Theater's music. And I know people who actually like the Mangini era better. Either they grew up with the Mangini era and they're young and they just got into Dream Theater in the past 10, 12 years, or they just, for whatever reason, didn't connect with Dream Theater back in the Portnoy era and now they do. I don't know the reason, but what I know is that this sounds more and more like Portnoy era Dream Theater than any of the other albums that have come since. And the proof is in the music. Just to recap a little bit for those who don't know, Mike Portnoy was kicked out of this band or left this band, depending on who you ask, because he wanted to take a break. He felt like Dream Theater needed a break. And they probably did, looking back on it now. They literally have never stopped. They only have taken like maybe 1 6-month hiatus or something like that in the during the first like 20 years of their career. Like they were just they broke in 92 and they just kept on going and they never stopped. And Portnoy went and got himself into some other projects like Avenged Sevenfold and the Neil Morse Project and Winery Dogs and whatever. He was doing a bunch of other things. He had other interests and he felt like Dream Theater would benefit from a break. Now, if you listen to this record, I tend to agree. And that's not to say that Dramatic Turn of Events is a bad album. It's actually fan-fucking-tastic. It's one of my favorites. It ranks amongst my favorites. However, the problem with it is that you can clearly hear that Dream Theater started influencing themselves. If you listen to the very first song on the Backs of Angels, and I find it interesting that this is the only Dream Theater album where the songs are listed as written by, music by, and it names the people. I wonder why that is. I mean, I understand that it's probably because Mangini showed up, was in the band, and probably didn't write anything. So that tells me all I need to know, right? That Portnoy definitely either wrote part of this or they were thinking in style or in line with what Portnoy would play. And it sounds it.
I crash and burn. I never learn. You're a common fixation.
But if you listen to the song On the Backs of Angels,
Beware your days are numbered.
God, it sounds like Pull Me Under at times. It really does.
Future to past. Every path leads me one less to my last.
The structure of it, some of the passages, like it is remarkably similar to Pull Me Under. It could be like the long lost sister of Pull Me Under. That's what it could be.
Tears fall from the shameless. Shelter me, guide me to the edge of the water.
Now, I will say that outside of that, the rest of the album is new, okay? And I'm not saying On the Backs of Angels is Pull Me Under Part 2, and it sounds like they're not like plagiarizing themselves, but it's certainly, I can understand where Portnoy was coming from. If the first song that they wrote for this album, or one of the first songs, was On the Backs of Angels, I would definitely, if I were Portnoy and if I was contemplating leaving the band or asking for a break for refresher or something like that, that would do it for me. I would definitely be like, yeah, that's starting to sound the same.
The first track on the Backs of Angels is a song we wanted to open the album to kind of illustrate our sort of signature sound, the sound of the band that has been something that we've cultivated and have been known for.
Now, this album is nearly perfect. I really, truly love most of the songs on this album a lot. Build Me Up, Break Me Down is a great, great song. Nice little 7-minute song. I mean, 7 minutes is not a normal length song for like metal radio or anything like that. But for Dream Theater, it's kind of a typical length song. Like that's kind of their wheelhouse in terms of like, hey, this is a short song. Here's 7 minutes. Like, because On the Backs of Angels is almost 9 minutes. But Build Me Up, Break Me Down is great melody, great song, just a well-written song, just a good song. Lost Not Forgotten. I love the series that they've put out since of bootlegs, studio releases, soundboard, concert, raw recordings. I'm fucking loving it. I love it. The Lost Not Forgotten stuff is fantastic, okay? But I don't like this song. I just don't. It's almost like I feel like on Lost Not Forgotten, they're shoehorning like a Metallica riff and trying to make it heavy, and it comes out of nowhere. Like I just don't like it. I just something about the song just doesn't sit right with me. And it's the only song on this album I strongly dislike. It keeps this record from being a perfect album.
Come shine my way. Make healing waters bury all my pain.
Bridges in the Sky might be one of again an all-timer. If I go back and I go through this entire episode, you're out of the top 20 Dream Theater songs I'm ever gonna pick. 2 of them are on this album. 1 of them is on self-titled. 2 of them are on Dramatic Turn of Events, and that's it. That's it. And Bridges in the Sky is one of them. Bridges in the Sky is such a great song that I feel like it should be Dream Theater's like Detroit Rock City. If you know what I mean by that reference, it should be their opening song forever. It is such a badass song and it kicks in so well, and it's got this great open with this odd sounding instrument and just, oh, it's so great. It's just a great, great song. The melodies on the chorus is just top 20 all time for anything that I like. One of my favorite songs ever.
Higher price I should pay. You keep your pride while I die inside.
Far From Heaven is a wonderful ballad. Love James LaBrie's all 3 of his ballads on here. And it's funny because there's another album in the Portnoy era that I'm going to point out has one too many ballads, but this is not one of them. This is the Life, Far From Heaven, and the album closer Beneath the Surface are just great. Well performed by LaBrie, nice solos, just good songs, just great songs. Honestly, as great as Bridges in the Sky is, Breaking All Illusions might be in the top 5 of my all-time Dream Theater songs. Holy hell, what a great song. John Mayung, lyric writer. What? Great song, just awesome song. The passages in this song and the musical breakdowns, the choruses. James LaBrie sounds amazing on this song. God, this album is fucking great. Dramatic Turn of Events is such a fantastic album that, I don't know, it's a good close to the Portnoy era, even though Black Clouds and Silver Linings is technically the close. And I fought so hard in my own brain to try and put Black Clouds and Silver Linings beneath this album, but I just couldn't. But this was a damn good start to the Mangini era. Unfortunately, in my opinion, it's definitely gone dramatically downhill since then. If you take View from the Top of the World versus this record, there is just no comparison. There is not one single moment on View from the Top of the World that touched this album. It's not even close.
So you guys are up for a nomination tonight.
Yes, we're very excited. It's awesome.
And what category?
It is a best hard rock and metal performance for our song On the Backs of Angels.
Wonderful. Congratulations to you. And how are you feeling about this evening?
And we're pumped. I mean, we're extremely excited. This is a dream come true for us to have been acknowledged by the Academy, to have a 9-minute song that's up for a possible Grammy.
9-minute
yes,
song.
9-minute song, On the Backs of Angels. So I think musically speaking, it really says a lot for a band like ourselves that I think to some degree we might have thought that this event itself would have eluded us our entire career. So yeah, it's amazing to be here. We're all extremely excited.
All right, coming in at number 9, just let's do a little background here. So Black Clouds and Silver Linings was the last album of the Mike Portnoy era. And no, I promise. So to this point, it seems like my countdown is chronological, right? So if you look at the Mangini era, there was only like 2 albums that were out of place in terms of chronological order. And then right out of the gate, my first album, my number 9 selection in the countdown at the beginning of the Portnoy era here is the last album of the Dream Theater Portnoy era, right? So No, I can assure you that it goes drastically off course chronologically going from here forward. But with that being said, I will also say the entirety of this list, with the exception of maybe 1, 2, and 3, from 4 to 9, incredibly difficult to rank. Incredibly difficult. I will honestly tell you that this rip for the Portnoy era all the way through A Dramatic Turn of Events, which was the first album of the Mangini era, might be one of the greatest 10 album rips of any band ever, period. Now, of course, this is all a subjective take, mostly because you have to be a fan of this band. I mean, you have to be a fan of this style of music. A lot of regular run-of-the-mill rock fans or pop music fans or whatever wouldn't get this. Meaning, not that they're not smart enough, they just don't have, it's not in their ear to want to listen to 15-minute epic songs of like sheer technicality and epicness like this. It's more or less an acquired taste. Let's say that, okay? However, I will say Black Clouds and Silver Linings overall has to be considered, to me, it was a sign. There's so much epicness and finality to Black Clouds and Silver Linings, all the way down to the title. Black Clouds and Silver Linings. Storm off in the distance. But there is a clearing, and it looks nice. It was almost hopeful. It sounds like whoever came up with that title, and when they agreed to it, I think there were two sides to the story. I think some of the guys within the band, or one guy at least, was thinking one thing, and the other guys were thinking something different. Now, I may be looking too much into that, but I'm sticking with it. As far as the album goes, from the very beginning of this album, A Nightmare to Remember.
A nightmare to remember. I'll never be the same.
Holy shit. The hugeness and the sheer like emotion and amazing melodies on this record. Amazing performances on this record. Great songwriting from start to finish. There is not a bad moment on this album, which goes to show you where we're headed in this countdown and how difficult it was and how I had to nitpick the shit out of everything. So let the nitpicking begin. A Nightmare to Remember is a perfect song, period. The middle section, the slow section of this song might be one of the best James LaBrie vocal melodies in the entirety of the catalog.
And all of the panic inside starts to fade. Hopelessly drifting, bathing in beautiful agony.
Sticking with the vocal melodies and the vocalization, the middle section, which sometimes makes me giggle just because I can picture Mike Portnoy doing this in the studio, and I'm sure it was hysterical when they were writing it. Like, I'm sure they fucked around with this a bunch because I've been in the studio, I've recorded albums, it can be very monotonous. So when you have a chance to like kind of goof around and fuck around, you take it, and it turns out to be quite hilarious, and I'm sure this was one of those moments. But this is the type of thing right here that would have dramatically helped The Astonishing if Portnoy was still in the band. And, you know, look, I don't know if The Astonishing would have ever happened if Portnoy was still in the band. I don't know how much pull he had. I don't know if that kind of rock opera thing was in his DNA, but his vocalizations throughout the catalog of his stuff definitely is missed in future stuff with the Mangini era for sure. And this type of characterization of something could have been useful on a project such as The Astonishing.
Walk through the gate, the greatest task to reach a higher state. Go! A rite of passage.
Then you move on to the Rite of Passage, which to me is possibly the perfect type of Dream Theater radio song.
Since the new world
tad too long for your typical radio song coming in at like over 6 minutes. So that might be a little bit too long. You might have to cut down like maybe the keyboard solo in the middle of the song. But like, again, amazing chorus, great melodies, things that are the cornerstone of what makes this band so great. Wither is an all-time ballad on the list of Dream Theater ballads, and sticking with the ballad theme, before we get into the middle song here, the Best of Times, it's not a typical ballad in terms of a slow song, but it's got ballad feel to it. It's got that kind of 80s rock feel to it with the really happy verses, and then of course like the sadness in the middle, and of course it deals with a heavy subject of death and missing and longing for the past and things of that nature. And I will talk a bunch in this episode about John Petrucci's solos and some of my favorite solos, but everybody creamed all over themselves about the Best of Times solo, and rightfully so. The solo at the end of this song is an all-timer and just shows why John Petrucci is not only the most technically sound speed guitarist that there is out there right now, but he writes with emotion and feeling, and it's what differentiates him from your regular technical prog metal guitarist this day and age. Shattered Fortress is one of the most inventive, wonderfully put together songs I think I've ever heard. I've heard of bands doing callbacks to albums and songs prior. Rush has done it. Periphery has done it. There have been many bands who have done it. Avenged Sevenfold has done it, where you take a part of a song and then you put it in another song to kind of bring continuity in a story or in a musical passage or something like that. Queen has done it. But this was different. This was something that took place over several albums, and the entirety of the song is made up of riffs, passages, and lyrical content and vocal melodies from like 5 or 6 other songs, I believe. I think it's 5 or 6. I don't remember how many songs it was. It was part of the 12-step suite that Mike Portnoy had written about his battle with alcoholism and his road to recovery, and it's just a wonderful end cap. Then, of course, the end of this album, Count of Tuscany, is the nitpick. Not nailing on the song. One of the most wonderful musical Dream Theater pieces in the entirety of their career. The melodies on this song are top-notch, amongst my favorite to ever sing, listen to, or whatever. Guitar solos, keyboard solos, vocal melodies, awesome song. Musically, 20-minute epic, tremendous song. Just absolutely tremendous and big. However, the lyrics to this song leave a little to be desired. Let's say that. Now, I will say this is a weird criticism because Dream Theater is not exactly lyrical gold. They've had plenty of misses, and you're going to hear about that because that's some of my nitpicks. It's a lot of my nitpicks as I go through are lyrical. It's lyrical. It's all lyrics because their music usually is top notch. Usually can't be touched. But the lyrics to this song are a little too like on the nose and again overdone. A lot like The Astonishing. Are we really doing this again? Like. This is about what a count that like and someone it's like it's not even that we're doing this again. It's a misunderstanding. Like that's what this is. It's a misunderstanding. Like that's what the whole story is. Epic music, huge music, very dramatic. Dude, no, what? Everything's fine. What are you talking about? Like it's cool. Like it's not awful. It's just like, oh man, like I wish it was 6 degrees of inner turbulence, like level lyrics. or octavarium level lyrics, or in the name of God level lyrics, like lyrics that I could quote and be like, this is just awesome. And like, no, this one is like, get into my car, let's go for a ride. Like, I don't know. It missed. Lyrically, it missed. However, it doesn't take away from the song. It's still an epically great song, period.